Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with me, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is Ken Owen, former Indiana broadcaster and DePaul University PR head. Join me now as I go on the aisle for a conversation with Ken.
Central Indiana. Wish TV is now live on YouTube TV and Hulu Live, offering more hours of local programming than any other station. Search for Wish TV or look for CW8 on both YouTube TV and Hulu Live to find us. Watch local news, sports, and lifestyle shows live from Wish TV. You can still catch Wish TV free over the air or stream it live on wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile apps. Wish TV, available in more places for the latest news, weather, and sports.
Welcome to my podcast, Ken Owen.
Tom, it's wonderful being here. Thanks for the invitation.
And, I said when I greeted you here at the lobby at Channel 8, where our podcast studios are, I said, well, I feel like I know you.
Well,
and, that's the way TV works, right? I saw your face for years. I'm a fan. We have a lot in common, my being in the business at RTV, and, you are now retired, is that correct?
more or less, yeah. I still get pulled out from time to time to do things. But
Yeah. Before I get started, I want to, if you will, dedicate this to our dear friend, Steve Sweitzer.
Oh, yes.
Can we talk about him right
absolutely.
off the bat?
No, absolutely.
And, Steve worked here at Channel 8 for years, and he had a reputation not only here at the station, but in the business in general. I've been reading Facebook posts about his recent passing, and there's a lot of people grieving out there. And for those who don't know who Steve was, why don't you fill us in?
Well, Steve was the chief photographer here for a long time, and then I think later in his career, the news operations manager. But Steve was... besides being a terrific photojournalist and a great guy, he was the glue that held the photography staff together downstairs, back when the newsroom was in the basement of this building, and was just a great spirit, a terrific journalist, somebody who put a lot of care into what he did, understood quality and strove, to strive to achieve top quality every time. And Steve is one of those guys that's just always been around. So, we're a week without having Steve. He died a year ago today, a week ago today. Seems like it's been a year. It's been a lot. Patty sent me a note a little while ago, and she's really grieving. I know a lot of people that worked with Steve, know Steve, saw him a lot more than I did, but love him like I do. Just can't fathom.
And for our listeners, Steve also, towards the end of his career, he came back out of retirement to work with Patty Spittler on her two shows, Great Day and Pet Pals TV. And so go on.
And was a terrific personality. I mean, that was in his bag of tricks all along.
He got to be a photojournalist finally. He didn't need a reporter.
Right.
He was the reporter and the photographer.
So he did, Steve was something else. And back to the Facebook post you mentioned, the people that worked for other stations and didn't really work alongside Steve, but interacted with him in the field, had just amazing things to say about how helpful he was. We live in a very competitive world, and this business was extremely competitive, television, and remains so. But back in the day when you had 4 or 5 stations like butting heads and trying to beat each other, Steve was one of those guys that if somebody else's battery didn't work, he'd lend him a battery.
Sure.
He loved the business, and in the best possible way. I think that you can love the business and kind of have an attitude about it, but he was always helpful and there to
What did you think of his pictures? Steve's photography itself, his work. Can you describe it for our listeners?
He just had a magnificent eye, and great photojournalists, great photographers can... you can snap, but it's knowing what the lighting is going to look like when you finally get that shot back. And this is back in the days. He started, of course, when there weren't phone cameras, and we didn't have instant cameras, so you would go into the field, shoot something, bring it back, develop it, and see what you got. And so the margin of error was pretty slim. You could go out and waste a roll of film and have bad lighting, shadows, what have you. Steve was one of those guys that just understood innately how a shot came together. And so there was an economy to his work if you went out. And I only covered a couple of stories with him because by the time I got here in 1989, he was chief photographer, and he was in charge of special projects and doing things like that. But when you did work with Steve, it was, I like to be very economical and not waste anybody's time and, kind of get to the meat of the matter. Steve was the same way, but always thinking pictures and always
Would you
identifying.
agree, as an editor, he was a great storyteller, and when you're a reporter, you're only as good as your photographer.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's in the film industry too. You know, if you don't have a good photographer, they can make or break, and an editor, and he did both. Make or break your piece, right?
And I think he understood, as great photographers do, what was needed to bring a story to a certain level. And then there are times, you're sent to a story that has no visuals whatsoever. So you have to either be creative or come back to the assignment desk and say, you know what, this is probably not worthy of a 2.5-minute package because there's really nothing to show.
If Steve is looking down, he will be missed, and he definitely left a legacy. And again, just he's what I like, that Jewish word mensch.
Absolutely.
He was a mensch. Stand up, kind, principled, just was really first class.
Yes, and energetic. The thing that really is so hard to digest about all this is, I never really thought about how old Steve was.
Yeah.
And Steve was 76. He didn't seem like he was 76. He seemed more like 62 maybe.
Well, just to share my own experience with him, we met years and years ago, and he, at the time, we had mutual friends, and they were Quakers, and he came from that tradition, which explains a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know
about
that.
the way he treated people.
Yeah.
If you think about it. And in any case, and then working at Six too, we had that connection, and then later on, I worked with him a couple of those Pet Pal stories because I worked with Patty for a short time. And I actually was intimidated by him because, I had never reported before. I'd always been a producer-director. I was on a public affairs show as a talent, but I was never a news reporter or anything like that. But I knew how to tell a story, of course, because of being a producer. But Stephen... he was very patient, and he did a lot of the writing, and, he made me look good.
Oh, yeah, and he was great at that. Yeah, he was not, there was not a barrier between the photographer and the reporter, and where there were gaps in your game, he would raise his.
My sympathies to Sheila, his wonderful wife, and his family, so if they're listening, know that he's being, we're thinking about him. And why did I ask you to be on the show?
That's a good question.
I cover the performing arts, but I'm the host and producer, and I'm, fortunately, Circle City Broadcasting lets me make the decisions about who or what I want to talk about, and I don't think it's a big stretch to bring in broadcasters all the time.
Well, let me dovetail with what you just said. I am a walking, breathing, living example of why the performing arts matter. And my parents were, they ran a music series in Chicago when I was growing up. And so we had Bill Evans play in my living room at 3 a.m, crazy things that happened. But my mom was a singer, and a very good singer, and was trained and wound up just having me and my 2 siblings. So she did not pursue that career. But music and Broadway shows were in my life from the time I was a young kid. We saw Carol Channing and Hello, Dolly. We went to London and saw plays. My parents were really into theater. And I was like a lot of kids, I was very shy. I didn't really know my place. I was small. I got bullied a bit. And I got to high school, and I had a music teacher named Doris Osmond at Hinsdale Central High School, and she saw something in me.
Where's that, Hinsdale?
Outside of Chicago.
Okay.
About,
I know that. Okay.
15 miles outside Chicago, and Doris saw something in me that I couldn't identify myself, but I started getting confident, not only in my ability to sing, but my ability to perform. And it culminated with I went from having glasses and braces and kind of being, I wasn't a wallflower, but I certainly was no standout guy, to getting the lead in The Music Man my junior year in high school, and then Tommy and Brigadoon my senior year. And those were breakthroughs in my life, especially The Music Man, because when you identify something you can do that you didn't fathom you could do, and when a teacher leads you to that door, and the performing arts are so crucial because, Tom, I could drop dead in the parking lot on the way out of here. I hope I don't, but if I did, I would tell you the most significant moment in my life was I was singing There But For You Go I in Brigadoon.
Well,
it was Saturday night. My grandparents, my parents, my siblings were in the audience. There were 1,500 people. And the song ends with There But For You. And it's higher than that. It's out of my range today, but it was at the very tip of my range when I was 17 or 18. And I nailed it. And, standing ovation, and that was the best moment of my life. When you're on a stage and you get that instant feedback from people and you have a moment like that, there's nothing in the world that can equal that. So television news probably opened to me because of Doris Osmond and because of the theater. And
cool.
I love music. I have a lot of friends that are musicians, and so it's all intertwined. And, when we look at schools that are cutting the arts and not understanding that people 15, 20 years ago started having the conversation of, why do you go to college? How much more money do you make? And the response shouldn't be you make X more dollars. The response should be, it's not about making a living, it's about having a life. It's about understanding literature and enjoying music and having an appreciation for nature and being a kind person and not being rigid in your thought, to realize at certain points in your life, these things I've been thinking are wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm not correct on this, and I need to reconsider some things. And so life is a process. You never arrive. And the performing arts, I think, are a really critical way of finding yourself and understanding your soul and understanding the world. So,
well, as I was saying, that I have had many of our colleagues on this show because I believe that there's a connection between broadcasting and the performing arts, because it's all about storytelling and having a voice. And we share similar backgrounds. I studied speech and theater and found myself in television. And one time a boss told me, Tom, your work is very flamboyant. And I kind of took offense at that, because that when I thought about what he was saying, he said, because of my creativity. And I believe that stemmed from studying speech and theater. And I, developed an aesthetic, right? And so my storyteller, as a storyteller, I think my storytelling was a little bit more vivid.
Sure.
And then working with the right people who did the pictures, it was like heaven, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was planning on asking you a series of questions. The thing is about broadcasters, we need broadcasters to support and promote the arts.
Yes.
And as you know, it's always a struggle. The balance between hard news and fluff, or feature stories and that kind of thing. Did you get a chance to do a lot of art stories?
I did.
During your career? Tell me about some of
Well,
them.
I would kind of carve them out. Patty and I sat next to each other downstairs, and there were times where I can remember she had a satellite interview with David Cassidy one day, and she was
Remind us, David Cassidy.
The Partridge Family.
Of course.
The biggest star. He had a bigger fan club than Elvis at his peak.
And who is the mom?
Shirley Jones,
there
his
you go.
stepmother in real life.
Yep.
But Patty was crazy busy, and so they came down and said, Patty, you've got your satellite interview in 5 minutes. She goes, I can't do it. I'm just crazy. And I grew up loving the Partridge Family, so I said, Patty, I'll do it. And went up and had a conversation, via satellite with David Cassidy. But I'm friendly with Todd Rundgren, the musician, and anytime he was in town, we do a story. And Todd is an interesting guy in that not only has he had a 50-year career in the music industry, but he invented the Apple Paint Box. He is he's a technology pioneer, and he can see around corners. And so I felt it was my obligation to, help the audience understand who this guy was and why it was important, whether or not you like the music. There's a lot to him that's really fascinating. And we had, I'm just throwing some examples out. Remember when Wilco was, Jeff Tweedy's band was probably releasing their second album. I got Patty to put them on the news that night. That happened a lot. I really tried to underscore the fact that, as a television station, there are only so many fires and police chases and homicides you can cover, and it really, Tom, it drags down the enterprise. I mean, at a certain point, it's just a litany of bad stuff, and it makes you think
if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, but in the
Is
end,
that true in your career?
less so. Less so.
Working for stations or corporations who, advertising dollars, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, back then we had bigger staffs, and I think the easiest thing to cover is a homicide. I mean, as horrible of a story as it is, you call the
During
police.
that long career of yours, I'm sure you had your accident reports, right?
Oh, yeah. I did everything. I mean, I can tell you, I got to the scene of a...
stand in the freezing 5:30 a.m. shoots reporting
dumbest
on
thing ever, but
roads
yes.
and...
Yes. And I got to a murder scene before the cops did once. I found, actually, was there with the body as the cars pulled up.
Oh, well, by the way, were you here? It was in that story that they did on Steve, the ISH. I don't know if you saw it, but did you cover the 78 blizzard here?
No, I was a wee lad. I was 17 at the time.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was hunkered down somewhere.
Yeah. Did Channel 8, when you were down here, did they put you up in a nearby hotel sometimes if they knew the weather was going to be bad?
I never had that happen here.
Okay.
When
if you were sign on, that's what we used to do at Channel 6.
Yeah, WLOS in Asheville, North Carolina. We were next door to the Grove Park Inn. And the station was an old mansion that was actually haunted by a ghost named Alice. And I don't know if you've been to the Grove Park Inn, Tom, but I would say it is my favorite resort in America.
Oh, where's that?
Enormous. It's in Asheville and up in the...
Asheville.
Yeah.
I've never been to Asheville, but they have that famous mansion there.
Remind me. Get on it, Tom. My gosh.
Remind me.
Biltmore and...
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a date with one of the heiresses of the Biltmore fortune.
And they got flooded out a couple years ago. Are they all back in good shape?
It's better. I know that some areas there were just devastated.
Oh, yeah.
But no, Asheville is a beautiful place. But I guess the story I was going to tell is that there were a couple of times where you get like 22-inch snowfalls in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Everything shuts down. And so they would just come to us and say, after the 6 o'clock news, and say, hey, after the 11, just go next door, and, you'll have a room at the inn. And it's where all the presidents have stayed over the years. So it's a really cozy, cool place overlooking the Smoky Mountains. And you go get a gin and tonic and sit in front of the fire, and, next morning you wake up and do the news again. But it was great.
Well, of course, I did my homework, and I've looked at your bio, and it's really interesting. You had a circuitous career.
That's a good word for it.
But you started in radio at DePaul. You were a student there, of course.
High school, actually. We had a high school station.
Okay. So where did you go to high school?
Hinsdale Central.
Okay. So when you got to DePaul, then you were already familiar with the whole,
I had decided at age 6, maybe, that I wanted to be a disc jockey for a living because I figured, Tom, that you work 4-hour shifts.
Did someone tell you had good pipes, by the way?
Well, I probably talked like that back then. So not yet, no. I think I probably wished for these, and I might have wished for better, but I got what I got, and I'm happy with what I got. But, you get a 4-hour shift. You get to play records. I love music. And then, girls call you. So I thought, is there a better job in the world?
Who'd you grow up listening to?
Larry Lujak in Chicago was like my big hero. But I was one of those kids that at age 10 or 11, I would call, like, I remember Dave Baum at WIND. He did a show at night, and I would say, Mr. Baum, can I come down and watch you? And I'd get on the train, my little 11-year-old self, and I think unaccompanied, and actually go to the radio station, walk over there, and sit in the booth.
You were a little broadcasting nerd.
Oh, I just love broadcasting. Yeah,
I love that.
Tried to get my dad to, we wanted to start a.
Did you walk around
station.
with a fake microphone and
do
stories?
Oh yeah. And I had a little Ampex tape recorder.
Did you interview your little friends?
I've got still some of the tapes. Yeah. Prepubescent me, with my little whiny voice, but. No, there's a real magic to what we do with broadcasting, and the idea, it's been watered down a bit by the internet because now everybody has the power of a printing press or a broadcast tower. But in our day, when we were young kids, the only way you could reach an audience was over the
Everybody's
air.
become a broadcaster too.
Yeah, and not maybe to the benefit of us all. I don't know. It's nice to have I don't know, guideposts. To have some
citizen
kind of
journalists. Citizen journalists.
Well,
they call themselves
citizen commentators more than anything. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a process to journalism, and I think what we're missing right now is number one. You touched on it a minute ago, where you talked about your how the teacher told you were colorful, or what? I'm trying to remember the word you used.
Flamboyant.
Flamboyant.
Yeah.
But that's really important.
Actually, I thought they were making a homophobic slur. It
Well,
pissed me off, but then I realized, Tom, settle down.
No.
He really cares about you, so it must be
Yeah.
a compliment. Think about what that could have meant. And I actually asked him later on, 30 years later. David Goff, I'll give you a shout out, David.
There you go,
if you're
David.
listening, you'll hear. He was a program director.
Yeah, well,
my boss at Channel 6.
David saw something that is important, and I think that what broadcasting often suffers from today is a lack of authenticity.
Yeah.
And so what you brought was your spirit, which is yours and is uniquely yours, and which can't be tamped down. And I think,
Did you have good bosses in your career? And who are some of the best?
oh gosh, I did. I would say Paul Karpowitz, who was the general manager here, was one of the great general managers that I ever encountered, as was Michael Fiorelli, who wound up running Dispatch, the 13 operation. But in Asheville, he was my general manager briefly. A lot of us I was only there 22 months. We were all kind of on the rise at the moment. Lee Giles was my boss here. Lee's a friend for life. And
He's regarded as a saint by so many people, starting with Jane Pauley and
Lee's an impact player. But it's a fascinating business, and I would say the list of bad bosses is a lot shorter. I mean, I could go on and on and on about great bosses.
What made Lee special?
I think Lee, number one, understood the market, and there was a time when I was getting ready to leave this place, and I was 37 years old, and when you're 37 years old, you think, I'm getting old.
How long were you here, by the way?
9 years.
Okay.
And Mike was still here, and they could not. When we talked about the future, it was like me talking about a country I've never visited. It was clear they hadn't even thought about life after Mike Ahern. And Mike is a dear friend. I having lunch with him tomorrow. But when you're 37, I didn't want anything to happen to Mike, but I did want to have some assurance that after the service I'd given this place that there was a role for me going forward, and they couldn't articulate that to me. And so one of the other stations in town, and it wasn't Channel 6, so I'll let you guess, but went out to lunch with the news director, and he expressed interest in bringing me in as their main anchor, and I, to my probably disadvantage, suggested that would be a mistake, because what 8 did was really smart, and what 6 did was really smart. They kept people in place, and Indianapolis was, and I think still remains, although the media landscape has changed a lot, you could put a collie dog in that chair for 15 years and he'd be number one, because they liked that collie dog, which is not to denigrate anybody. I mean, we had great people on the air. But what this station, Channel 13, was doing was just rolling through anchors every 2 or 3 years, especially male anchors. And you're not going to win in Indianapolis that way. You could bring in literally the Messiah to do your 6 o'clock news, and it's going to take some while for that thing take a while for that to get traction, because the viewers are watching Mike Ahern, they're watching Howard Caldwell, they're watching Clyde Lee. It takes a while to change. But when you cross that threshold, all of a sudden you're a very popular person, and you're given some license that you never had before. And I think Lee identified that, you had people like Mike and Debbie, and Tina Cosby was here for a long time. Patty Spittler's still here. But these people that are part of the fabric of our community, they're not just broadcasters. They are friends. They're members, pillars of the local community. And Lee understood that you can find, certainly in my case, there are prettier people than me. There are better people than me. But at a certain point, if you've been on the air long enough and you have the trust of people in Indianapolis, you're going to have an audience, which is how you win.
You speak of the power of this medium, and I've never taken it for granted. I don't know about you. I've never felt jaded about this opportunity that I have lucky. And have had. And sometimes I forget, but and then I have an encounter out there in the public, and someone reminds me, most of the time young people or someone who'll come out of nowhere, and I'm sure you've been through this too. You'll be at a grocery store, and someone will come up to you, oh, you're on TV, or you used to be on TV. And that whole phenomenon of how you came into their living room, so you're part of their experience. It really is. It's very spiritual, I think.
Oh, I could not agree more. And you have an obligation, I think. It's, I really, and I tell this to young people all the time, you really need to bring kindness and empathy to your work, because you'll have encounters with people on days where you're busy or you're on a date or you're doing something and, you'd rather not be bothered. But how many people have jobs where they essentially, work in a cell? Nobody sees them. Nobody knows they're working. We had situations where we were basically in the corner window of Marshall Fields at Christmas. There are people walking by all day long looking in on us. And it mattered to them that we were doing that work. And what a blessing that is.
You were on radio and doing live in the Marshall Fields?
Oh, no. I was making a bad metaphor. But you're talking about how when you work in broadcasting.
Well, it could have been a remote. So.
Yeah, well, I've done those, yeah. And some really bad ones, too.
Yeah.
But no, there's something about our industry. The fact that you form these relationships with people who have never really met you. There was a woman, I still have it, when I was here at Wish. This is the oddest thing, Tom. She would take snapshots of her television and then send me the photos as if I needed proof that I was actually getting out over the air. But that's evidence of the fact that it really mattered to her that I was here and that Mike was here and Patty was here. And so, you can never just shrug that off and say, well, that's silly stuff.
It is a huge responsibility to... But it also means that with that, too, as you said, it's very important to show grace when somebody acknowledges you. I learned, it took me a while to learn when they said, oh, I see you on TV, that's the compliment.
Yes.
Just that. And so I always say, thank you.
Yes.
And don't pshaw it or, underestimate it or whatever, try to tell them, well, because I found out, too, when people give you a compliment, say thank you. Otherwise, you're telling them, if you shrug them off, that their opinion doesn't count.
Absolutely. And it's funny when you leave the business and you go to a cocktail party. For years you'd go and they'd say, who are you? Or they'd say, you look familiar to me. And I still get that, and I've morphed quite a bit from those days. But you had this entree. You'd say, I do the 5 o'clock news on Channel 8. And they'd go, oh, wow, how cool. And they had 5 follow-up questions. Now, you go out and you say, well, I'm director of media relations at DePaul University, and they look at you blankly like like they got clubbed with a ham or something and move on. So there is a magic to the doors it opens when you work in this business.
Oh, yeah. So you're not retired. You are still working with DePaul?
I am actually retired because I ran the Oven Lecture Series from 2001 until we had Trevor Noah on April 30th. So that was it. And so no, I'm pretty officially retired, Tom. I still MC some events. I still get called to do projects. I do some voiceovers. I got a little frog in my throat right now, so it's good I'm not doing a voiceover. But no, it's been a blessing, and I really have enormous thanks for the fact that I worked in television and then worked for my alma mater. I had 2 careers I really loved.
The broadcasting, do you miss it? And when?
I miss the camaraderie. Yeah, I miss the interaction. There's a great feeling you have when you put something together every day.
How about the adrenaline when you're in the newsroom?
Yeah. No, there's.
You remember that?
Oh God,
and
yeah.
the pressure.
Absolutely.
Did you like it?
I did. And sometimes being, doing live shots in strange settings. I went to the Soviet Union with Billy Graham for 10 days, and he became a friend.
That.
There are these things that happen that the 65-year-old me looks back on, and I think, how did I do that, and how did I pull it off? How did I should have been overwhelmed by it. I should have been frightened by it. I should have probably had second thoughts about it. But this is what we do in the business. You get an assignment and you plow forward.
So you never got caught up. It sounds like you were. I'm sure you were at some point, but were you ever starstruck?
Oh yeah.
And who are some of the people you were starstruck that you interviewed in your career?
I remember when Paul McCartney came in 1989. It was 90, I guess. 90. February of 1990. But they had a news conference at Market Square Arena, and he was playing 2 dates. And the second date, I think at 3 in the afternoon, they had a news conference where he. Now, you're in this little room in Market Square Arena, and there probably were 8 other reporters there, photographers, and he walks in, and, anybody that's alive knows, God, that's Paul McCartney. And there's a way he carries himself. I mean, first of all, I've always admired the guy, not only as a musician and a songwriter, but as a human being. There's a lightness to him. There's a kindness to him. And he walks into the room and he's going, bum, 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 bum. Hey, everybody, and I see, and sits into the chair. And literally everybody in the room froze because it's Paul McCartney. This isn't Gerald Ford or somebody that, gets questions all the time. You have an opportunity to ask a question of Paul McCartney. And I was kind of ready for at least myself to freeze up. I didn't know if all my colleagues would, but I asked him right out of the gate about the Beatles coming to Indianapolis, and there's that story, if you recall, of Ringo disappearing. He went to Carmel with a state trooper, didn't tell anybody. He was out all night, and they literally got up and thought he'd been kidnapped.
I never heard that story.
Yeah, and I've actually been able to ask Paul about it and Ringo.
I love that.
And Ringo, the great thing about that story is nobody else asks it. So.
Carmel, of all places.
Yeah, and Carmel was, pretty.
It's a sleepy little town.
There was a little cafe up there. There was a state trooper by the name of Jack Marks. I think that was his name. And if I'm wrong, I apologize to the family. But he's no longer alive. But when I was here, we did a story on that night. And, of course, they have the great Beatles State Fair footage, which I utilized. And then the trooper and the others that were involved. And then I threw in the Paul McCartney soundbite. And
you can't get any bigger than that, Paul McCartney. He's still out there. He's got, this morning on the Today Show, there's all this press out about his
new record.
His new record.
And
he was on Saturday Night, well, not Saturday Night Live. He
was.
At paying tribute to Colbert. He was on that show, too.
Yes.
So he's very relevant still.
And it's strange, Tom, because we... when I don't know, Bing Crosby was probably like 78 when he died. So to have an 84-year-old guy still out there putting out records, and the interesting side of that is you read online people. The trouble with online is you get these people that just all they do is spend their day being catty.
Trolls.
Trolls. Yeah, and all they can be is critical, and they're in their mom's basement eating a donut, and they're talking about how Paul McCartney has lost his voice and he shouldn't embarrass himself like this. And you know what? It's a blessing he's leaving us with music, and he could have 20 years ago retired and just said, the hell with it. I've probably written my best songs. Why would I put myself through the anguish of this? He has something in his soul he wants to share with people, and if you don't like it, that's your right. But just keep the shut it. I don't want to hear it. So we're lucky in this era because we've got people who are late in their lives who are still productive. And again, it's not about making money. It's not about being a star. It's sharing something.
Well, your friend
that's real.
Patty and I, we talk a lot about such things as longevity and relevance because we're, I'm 78 and Patty and I are from the same generation, I'll say. And, we feel very strongly that, why would I leave if I can still have something to offer, leave this behind? I'll know when it's time. What is your decision about the way you're living your life now? Have you ever had any thoughts about doing a podcast or going back on the air?
Oh, I have.
What do you want to do? Do you have anything along those lines?
I probably need somebody to hold my hand because I think if my great fear would be to do a podcast or put myself out there in some way and do it clumsily, not have an audience, waste my time, waste other people's time. So my critical thing would be just understanding I was going to have some distribution mechanism, that there'd be some way of people finding the show.
Yeah.
But no, I do an occasional radio show for WITT out of Zionsville, is a non-commercial public radio station, and they have fund drives. So I give them a 2 or 3 hour show, and they play it, and I have great fun because I've got 9,000 CDs in my house, and I like a child, I go through and find records I wanted to share with people.
Yeah.
And I do shows for the station at WGRE. The students are nice enough during final exams week to request a show.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it. I think I would love to find a vehicle, but I also I'm cognizant of the fact that I've been out of this for a long time.
Yeah.
And there are nice people like you that remember me, but a lot of people do
Well,
not.
you know, I don't know who's out there going to be listening to this, but you just said for yourself you're available.
Yeah, so
So, hey, here's the
Easily
thing
found.
about your life story is compelling, like so many of us who've been in this business. The wealth of what you've experienced in the field and the people you have met. And, you know, when I asked you, you know, were you starstruck? I'm sure you have so many have had so many encounters with people from all walks of life. Maybe someone, just an ordinary person. Do you recall any stories that you did that just really tugged at your heart?
Oh boy, this may be a little heavy, but my best friend died at my house in 1990, November 18th, 1990. Yeah, he was 29, about to turn 29 years old. I was 29 years old, about to turn 30. And he essentially had an aneurysm in his stomach. His stomach exploded in his sleep. And so I found him, had to try to revive him, could not. He died. I gave the eulogy. But my dad and my brother came in. It was a Sunday. And they came in and spent I was not obviously in good shape with me. And we were up all night talking. And I just had to do something. You know, when you're in that period of mourning and shock and none of it made any sense, I had to get out of my house. So I came here to Channel 8 to work on Monday morning, which was completely counterintuitive. And they told me I didn't have to, of course, but I said, I think I need to get out of the house. And I was downstairs, and Jim Scott, who was the terrific assignment editor at Wish for a long, long time, but Jim was kind of a chirpy guy, you know, always upbeat. And I was not chirpy that morning, I can tell you. Very tired, very sad, very confused, very shaken. And Jim said, Ken, we're going to send you to Riley Hospital. There's a young lad who's waiting for a bone marrow transplant that's going to hopefully save his life. And, you know, okay. So I went, I did the story. And I didn't even recollect doing the story. I mean, I'm sure I put my what heart and soul I had that day into it, but I delivered the story. I left, I went home that night, and it was probably, let's see, Tom, I'm just trying to give a timeline. I was at DePaul, so that story would have aired November 19th, 1990, and this had to be like 2006, 2008, but I distinctly remember parking my car downtown, walking north on Illinois Street. I was right by St. Elmo's, you know, right where the sign is, and they've got the bricks with the names on the sidewalk, and kind of minding my own business. And somebody walks by and said, hey, are you Ken Owen? And I said, yeah. And they said, you may not remember this, but I was a little boy, and I was waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and you did a story on me that night. I literally broke down in tears on the street. I mean, you talk about a gift in terms of the interconnectedness of life.
Yes.
You know, that someone who, I lost my best friend. I encountered this person who, it was a day in my career. It was a story. It was a person I interviewed. No follow-up. You know, that's usually what happens. And to be confronted by them, and we hugged, to have this moment where you realize that that's why we're here.
You just made me think of the, as you can tell, I like to pivot a lot. And the things that you're telling me, that it's like in a good conversation, it inspires me. Well, you need to ask him about this. So do you think much about immortality, your own?
Oh, I don't.
Immortality.
Mortality or
Mortality.
Mortality. I know I'm not immortal, so I can clear that up quickly. I do. And it becomes, life is interesting, at least, and we all view it different ways.
Sure.
You think that what happens to you is what happens to everybody.
Well,
of course
you experienced it at a young age, so it had to have been profound. But even then, you were forced to face death, right?
Yeah. Well, even then, though, you can say it was an anomaly. It's a
Sure.
one-off.
Yeah.
When you're 35, 45, 50,
You didn't become obsessed with fear about, oh God, yeah, okay.
And I don't fear it, but I think that when you're 35, 45, 50, the treadmill is moving, but you can't see it, right?
Yep.
So time is passing, but your parents are still alive if you're lucky. Maybe you lose a grandparent, and that's jarring. But, they lived a good, long life, and there's all this time to come. When you get to be 60, 65, back to Steve Sweitzer, people that are dear to you, people that seem like they're in better health and actually more vibrant than you start going, that's scary.
My mother, who died at the age of 93, told me the hardest thing about aging. I think she told me this when she was in her 80s, seeing your friends pass away and your contemporaries. Every time I turn on the TV, a rock star or an actor or someone I grew up with is gone. It forces you to remember, okay.
No, it's
You looked in the mirror lately?
Well, it is jarring, and I think so. Mortality, I guess. I think when I'm gone, I will be remembered, if I'm remembered, and it'll probably be a brief moment that I'm remembered. But the most important stuff I've done, besides, I'm very happy with my careers and what I was able to do and the impact I had. But I'm working with Indiana University. They've created an Indiana Broadcast History Archive.
I was going to get to that.
And, Tom,
it's a huge contribution. That's why I reached out to you. I needed some help with some facts, and there you were.
Well, and, I hope I was helpful. But in our industry, we work and we work and we work, and there are all these people across the city covering the mayors and covering the Colts, covering the Pacers, doing all the things that we did day to day. But too often those reports aired once and wound up in a dumpster. And the great thing is that Mike Conway, who's a professor at IU, and Josh Bennett, his associate, have taken it upon themselves to collect this stuff and put it in some form. So you've got the Howard Caldwell collection, you've got the Ann Ryder collection, you've got the Ken Owen collection, Dave Smith, Ken Beckley, all these people that worked in the business. And in 50 years, 100 years, 200 years' time, people will be able to sit down and see what Bob Orr looked and sounded like, and see the closing ceremonies of the Pan Am Games with Bill Hudnut. And these moments in Indianapolis history won't just be a couple of lines in a textbook. They'll be right there in front of you to be replayed with audio and video and everything that goes with it. So I think that's what I'm really excited about now. While I'm here, saving as much as I can and getting it to people, and I share things every day on social media just to remind people that broadcasting is...
I started following you, and you started posting, and that's when
Well, thank you, Tom. No, it's a really...
Oh, I lived a lot of that history. So
we all have, and I think I'll tell you a story. I could probably give you 3 hours on this one topic, but I get some really interesting notes. And one night, I went to bed, and I literally tucked myself into bed and looked at my phone, which you should never do, by the way, if you're at home, but we all do that. And I had received a note on Facebook Messenger from someone, it said, this person is not, in your group, you don't have to read this, whatever. Well, I looked at it, and it was a woman who said, I'm sorry to bother you, but I was online, and I noticed on the Indiana Broadcast History Archive website that you have, it's in your collection, a 1953, 1954 TV commercial for a concrete company. And it says, she couldn't access the video because it's behind a wall. The attorneys are very concerned about copyright, so a lot of stuff is not visible to the public, but you can read a description. And the gentleman who did the ad was her father. And he had died when she was about 1.5 years old, so she'd never really heard his voice. She'd never seen him in a moving picture. So I'm in bed, Tom, and I thought, I owe it to myself. I got out of bed, put my slippers on, went downstairs, turned on my computer, and because I couldn't remember the clip, but I've got 18,000 clips, so I don't remember lunch yesterday, much less the clips. And I found it, and yes, I had it, and I was able to send her a digital copy. And by the time I got back into my bed, which is 8 minutes later or something, she had responded. She said, "I'm crying. I'm seeing my dad for the first time in my life."
Oh my God!
So there's really enormous power in these memories, and you think of Watson's Girl TV commercial or Sammy Terry or the things that we all observed over the airwaves back in the day, just kind of shrugged them off, but they're part of our DNA. They shaped our times, and so it's a thrill to get them in some form where they can be preserved for the future and revisited.
What are your thoughts about the business in general and what you've seen occur throughout the continuum of your career?
In journalism?
Yeah. Television journalism in particular.
Well, Mike Ahern and I are going to have a conversation about this next week at the Indiana Broadcast Pioneers meeting.
Give us a preview.
Well, we're going to have lunch tomorrow and actually lay out the conversation. But I really
he was on the air here recently with Patty on Lifestyle Live, the show that I do.
I saw him, yes, with Steve too, which is poignant.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, Steve was sitting next to him. But Mike has a unique view of things because he started in radio in 1962 and then morphed into TV, I want to say in 66, 67 here, and then was around till 2004. And we used to anchor a couple of segments every day together. And number one, Mike is the funniest guy you will ever meet in your life. And he had a sick knack, I would say, of telling a joke and delivering a crazy funny punchline about 4 seconds.
Was his humor dry or?
Well, yeah.
How would you describe it?
Mischievous.
Okay.
He had that little elfin look in his eyes, like he was going to lay one on you. And he would deliver the punchline like 3 seconds before the commercial ended and you had to come out to camera. So there were so many times where I'd come out just literally weeping. I was laughing so hard.
Yeah, great timing.
Yeah, and he was off camera, his shoulders hunching up and down, laughing like a schoolboy. But no, Mike is a funny guy. But he would tell me, and he was very prescient. When he started in the business, they used to have a Shell sign between the two anchors. Tonight's newscast brought to you by Shell Oil. And we went through that period where you had no sponsorships. I mean, the newscast was sacred. The salespeople stayed upstairs. They were not allowed in the newsroom. If they came down, they got very dirty looks. They were all our friends, but we didn't want commerce and journalism to intersect. And the journalism was sacred, and it truly was. People are going to be out there snickering, but I never in my career had a partisan conversation in a newsroom. No one ever said that guy's a jerk or this policy's stupid or, a Republican or a Democrat's stupid. It was, we're doing a story on this idea, and you would go out and get both sides, 3 or 4 sides if there are that many, and bring it back and try to distill it into something that kind of presented it for people to understand. But there was never a political agenda or anything else. So I think that we got to a point where news became a big profit center. When Mike began, they did 15 minutes, and it was kind of, you did it because you wanted to be relicensed by the FCC. In the 70s, we moved from 16 millimeter film to pneumatic tape to beta tape, and now instead of developing a film and waiting 6 or 7 hours to show it, you could bring the tape back, stick it in the machine, and let it rip. And there was an immediacy to what we did, the Tony Kuritzis thing being a prime example.
I was going to bring that up earlier, yeah.
I wasn't here for that, and Tony used to call me in the newsroom, which is another story. But I think that, so Mike saw a business that went from, you did news as a public service and it was not a cash cow, to all of a sudden we're going to do more and more and more news, and we're going to sell a lot of advertising. And then by the time he left the business, there was Tonight's Sports brought to you by Marsh. So the Shell sign was back. And I think we lost something in that process. We were very cognizant of the fact that we needed to make money. Overnight ratings changed the business, I think, radically, because we used to, in the old days, come in and after a month of really working hard at doing the news, this book would come in and Lee Giles would stand and Jim Scott would have a magic marker and they'd write on the board, Noon News, 11.2, Channel 6, there'd be a cheer because we won that one. We then got to a point where every morning you'd come to work and there'd be, with a thumbtack in it, this thing on the bulletin board that would break down every quarter hour of the day before. And I remember one of our former general managers here, who will go unnamed, would look at that thing every day and, what the hell happened at 5:45? Well, it rained 5 days in a row and the sun came out. People walked their dogs. There wasn't any magic to it. But when you get that kind of data in that quick of a turnaround, you become very reactionary and you start thinking about, well, what's happening to us, as opposed to looking at the big picture. And trends, as I said earlier about news anchors, you can bring in, again, you could put Jesus on a set and, you'd probably get a little bounce. But in the end, they're going to watch Ahern or Caldwell because they're used to watching those guys. It's going to take Jesus a long time to get some traction.
Yeah. So who do you watch these days?
I flip around. I had
Or where do you get your news, I should ask?
Mostly the internet, but I'm a very discriminating.
Do you know how many times I have accessed news that broke on Facebook as opposed to even before the New York Times or the Associated Press? I've seen it on Facebook, and when that happens, I'm always like stunned.
I really believe, Tom, before it got really, Elon Musk, but Twitter for a while was probably the most powerful news engine in the world. They weren't really creating any content, but I learned about Michael Jackson's death through Twitter. I mean, there were all these things that you would just they would pop up, and you got it.
Citizen journalists, I'm talking about.
Yeah,
they were there. They're there. They were there when the person.
Yeah, but back in those days, it was like the Associated Press is reporting that Michael Jackson is dead, or whatever the story was. It was a real source. And you could go and click on it and find out more.
I don't know if you saw the lobby of the way in here. They brought in some Channel 6 memorabilia, including the old Associated Press machine. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You and the producer would be, tearing that off every morning?
Oh, yeah. And, sometimes there was more. It was like 5 trees of paper were just rolled up because it hadn't been cleared all night.
I wasn't directly involved in a news department, but I did direct cut-ins during the Today Show, and I was around the news department a lot. And, I always be grateful to people like you and the journalists that surrounded me at the time, Howard Caldwell and Ken Beckley in the beginning when I got there, and then later Clyde Dion and such. But the ethics and the standards were so high, and I just feel grateful. That's a tradition that I came from, and I'm sure you will always be grateful for that. Now you see what's happened to the landscape, right?
Well, everybody's got a broadcast tower. Everybody's got a printing press. And if I were king for a day, the 2 things I would do, number one, I think most people cannot tell the difference between news and opinion. And opinion is 3 people shouting at each other, one of them from one party, the other 2 from, depending on what network you're watching, but just shouting each other down. If CNN wanted to get powerful again, I would think you eliminate talking heads.
Well, my opinion.
Straight news.
My opinion is that media is partly responsible for where we are today.
Oh, absolutely.
And
we dumbed it down.
Creating that division and polarization because it's like it bleeds, it leads. People love conflict. They like Jerry Springer on their news now.
Well, but in the end, if you look at what really works in media these days, distinctly local newspapers like the Greencastle Banner Graphic, they cover things like barn fires and court hearings and the obituaries, of course. But I mean, it's intensely local. And you're right. I think what happened, we got to a point where every market's newscast started to look and sound the same. You brought in a consultant from San Diego, and he'd say, "Well, this is working in Topeka." Well, this ain't Topeka, pal.
Yeah.
And I think when Trevor Noah was at DePaul, we were talking about authenticity in media, and it's his belief that it's the lack of authenticity that has killed media. That it's just everybody essentially regurgitating the same crap. And if I think if you focus on the intensely local, and again, the second piece of it is, I think, having an ombudsperson, having a way for viewers to say, "Hey, you weren't fair on this story," or "I think you got this wrong," and being answerable to it. Because I think in our day we were more that way. I think that if you were called out on something, you were quick to explain how the story, worked out the way it did. And if you were wrong, you would correct it.
Yeah.
And right now, there's this bulldozer mentality of that aired 2 hours ago. We're on to something else.
Yeah.
So it's complicated. I think we will find our way out of this. And I do have a lot of respect for the people that are still, toiling in the field. And it's a different animal. But we need good information. Gosh, that we're at this moment in our history because we're craving it and we can't find it.
With your long association with DePaul and currently your work here, you're still an educator at heart, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I was never smart enough to really be an educator.
Well,
I've taught some
but I
classes.
think broadcasters are educators as well. It may not be literal, but there is a factor involved there, informing and educating the public. And as such, you probably have some really great advice for young people, and I always like to ask that question because it never runs out of style.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to people out there listening, young people who might be considering a career, especially, we come from the old days, and the whole thing has changed, but just the idea of the business in general. What do you have to say, whatever they choose to do, what do you have to say to them?
Lift it up. I think Mike's day in the 1960s, you went into journalism because you really enjoyed telling stories. I think by the time I came along, there was a celebrity culture developing. And I think I would meet a lot of people who would say, "My daughter's going to be the next Jane Pauley," or it wasn't about the work; it was about the status. It was about the place it puts you.
Brand.
Yeah, but if you really love telling stories, it shouldn't be about what it gets you, what it pays you. Those things will come, but there's going to be a great demand for people that can tell stories and deliver them, and it's a hard question to answer, Tom, because we're in this TikTok culture where everybody's trying to find goofier ways of getting across.
I always blame it on the Kardashians.
I do too, as a matter of fact. Yeah, the Kardashians are responsible for everything, including
and a certain
acid rain.
unnamed reality star.
Well, yeah, I call it the Kardashian culture. It's this, what did you do to become famous? I mean, back to David Cassidy, people derided him because he was a teen idol, but he could sing and he could act and he did show up to work, right?
Yeah.
He didn't just go to a hotel room and have sex with somebody, which made him a star, which is kind of the new avenue. And to me, that's tawdry, and you work for it. So your question, I think that live with what you do. Live with yourself and feel good about what you're doing for the people around you. Don't live an insular life, because the work you do has impact, and it can be negative, it can be positive, but I think, again, you want to lift it up. You want to do something with your life that helps this enterprise.
What are your thoughts for young people about seizing opportunities when they come your way?
Oh, every time. Just
don't say no.
Don't say no, and moreover, I would say, when I was a senior at DePaul, I was still intent on being a disc jockey because girls call you, you play records, and you work 4 hours a day. But Lee Giles came and talked to our broadcast journalism class, and I was never bashful. So I walked up to him at the end of the class and said, "Mr. Giles, I'm Ken Owen. I'm a senior here at DePaul." And believe it or not, we have a relationship to this day.
I love that.
That began on that day.
So you had chutzpah.
Well, I had a little chutzpah. I didn't really want to work in news. I thought news people were boring, and
But you knew how to network, early on.
Well, so yes, show up, but when you're in a room and you can talk to somebody,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah, let people know what you do. And people would, Lee's office downstairs would have tapes stacked to the ceiling, and people would call me and say, Ken, I really want to work at Wish TV. And they'd be in Michigan, or they'd be in Texas, or they'd be somewhere else. And I sent my tape in, and I said, that's not enough. You need to get on a plane or get in your car and come down here and just call the news director and say, Lee, can I have 5 minutes of your time? I'll meet you in the lobby, shake your hand. I want to hand you a resume and just make an eye-to-eye, moment contact. Because that puts you in a different group. That big stack of tapes is all a bunch of faceless people who went to the UPS store and mailed it. But you want to be that person that when he thinks about the opening, well, that person seemed to have, a real zest for it. And some of news back then was central casting. They're looking for some particular type. A woman left, so they're going to find a woman to replace her. But you want to be on the short list. And the only way you get on the short list is by sticking your neck out, because it's human nature to just be bashful and think I'm not worthy and it'll come to me eventually. It won't.
So, Ken, how can people reach out to you if they have questions about anything we've talked about, and of course the association as well, if they want information about it?
Well, I'm a social media whore, so they can find me on Facebook, Ken Owen, or LinkedIn. I'm good about answering everything, unless it's tawdry. And
you're good on Messenger. That's how I found you.
Yeah, I go no, and obviously I knew you and knew of you, and so it was great to connect. But those are great tools, and then you can. Yeah, I'm very visible online. Let's just put it that way. So if you've got something you need, great. And I'm always happy to counsel young people or offer what I can. But I think the key tools a young person is going to need today is a dexterity of thought, and you need to be lithe. When I was 20 or 22, it was a business where Howard Caldwell and Mike Ahern could exist. You could work until you were 70 or 68, and you could get old on television, and television paid. And there were prospects that you could maybe go to the network and make even more money and have a bigger impact. Today, what I detect is it's an industry that people either get pushed out of or walk away from at age 30, 32, 35. It's a young person's business. Always was, but it allowed certain people to grow old and gracefully navigate it. So don't think you're going to be doing whatever you're doing at age 22 when you're 52.
Well, it's not unusual in today's culture or business environment for young people to have at least 4 or 5 careers.
Absolutely.
Data demonstrates that. Yeah.
And
so illustrates that. Well, this has been an absolute delight. It's so great to get to know you.
Well, you too, Tom, and thank you for the great things you do in the community. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And do you get out to arts events much, the theater, the symphony, concerts, and all kinds of stuff?
From time to time. I live in Avon, so it's
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into all that, but I have a relationship with the Hendricks Live Performing Arts Center, Chris Petrelli.
I know Chris.
He's taken a page from what they did up in Carmel, and Avon's going to be a happening place very soon.
That's literally a mile from my house, and I love that venue. And there are really exciting things happening.
Yeah, well, shout out to Chris and what he's doing, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thank you again. And the reason I asked if you're out in the theater is perhaps you will see me on the aisle.
Oh, terrific. I will look for you and greet you with a friendly hug, I promise.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the opportunity.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official newsletter for 15 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community. Thank you for joining me on the aisle. Please subscribe to my podcast, and if you want to hear previous episodes, find them on the All Indiana Podcast Network, or listen to them wherever you get your podcasts. This is Tom Alvarez.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.